Welcome to Complexity Made Simple. My name is Paul Allen, and before we get into today's video, well, I'm just going to remind you the 3 books that are on sale. Drink tea and read the paper. If you're a green belt and a black belt and you want simple instruction on how to apply your skill, design of experiments for 21st century engineers, and finally, a statistical process control for small batch production. They are all available from lulu.com and the links are in the video below. Okay, welcome to the latest video. And in this video newsletter, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at process audits. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to show you a way of doing world-class process audits. So this is a reaction to someone who asked me, would I train them in a particular level of process audit? So normally what we're talking about here is things like ISO 9001 that you get audited in, NADCAP, which is a particular quality standard for the aerospace industry. So if you want to put things in aeroplanes and aerospace technology, normally people get NADCAP approved. And the other one, and this was the one I was asked about actually, was VDA. It's called VDA 6.3. It's German. I'm not even going to attempt the German. So I was asked if I'd train someone to be a process auditor to do this, and I said to the person, well, it's not what I do. I don't teach people necessarily to do audits to a particular quality standard, and one of the reasons why I don't do that, these audits, these quality standards, they're simply not world class. There is gaps in what they do, and the gaps are massive in my opinion, and because they're massive, even if you are accredited in these things, you can have processes that are absolutely bloody awful, but they will pass the audit. And so what I want to show you is, I want to show you how to do a world-class process audit, how to get your process to be as defect-free as we can possibly get it, how to really get it under control. Because by the way, that's what these are supposed to do. They're supposed to provide process control. They're supposed to help you to make more money. They are not a prize or a badge to be won. They are a technique for making more money if you use them correctly and if you get your process audits to be world class. So the one I'm interested in is world class level process audit. So I'm going to show you what that is. I'm going to show you what's missing from these techniques currently. So let's talk about the laws of physics, because that's what this is all about. So we have a process. You have inputs. I'm going to change my pen. You have inputs and you have outputs. That's better. So you have a process. Now these things are supposed to control this. That's what they're for. So if we just complete the diagram, inputs, outputs. Everyone that's watching this, you have this. And what does your process do? Makes money, all right? And you're supposed to be using these things to make more money. So what is a control plan? Let's talk about a control plan as opposed to an inspection plan. If what your control plan says is that you are going to measure here, and what you will do is you will grade good from bad. That is not a control plan. That is an inspection plan. And it isn't great, because what you're basically saying is, we don't have a clue what we're doing, therefore we have to check everything before it goes out, because there's a good chance we've made a defect. What a control plan is, on the other hand, is controls on the inputs. Now, to be fair, that's often what a lot of this is related to. So ISO 9000 and NADCAP and stuff, they often encourage you to put input controls onto your process. And then of course the audit comes along and it checks this. Now the audits, the reason why I have a problem with these audits, when I first came across ISO 9000, it was actually called BS 5750 in the United Kingdom, and I worked at a company where we were trying to get certified in this particular quality standard. We got a consultant in, and he basically said, well, it's very simple. He said, say what you do and do what you say. He said, if you do that, you'll pass the quality standard. Now don't get me wrong, within these quality standards it actually mandates certain things that you should try and do these days, so it's giving you more direction than that. But to all intents and purposes, you have a process, it's unique to you, you tell us what the rules are, and then we'll audit the rules to make sure you use them. So the audit goes like this. It says, do you have a standard operating procedure for these inputs? All right, do you have a standard operating procedure? And then the second thing that these auditors do is they basically say, and do you use the SOP? So do you have an SOP and do you use it? Say what you do what you say. It's very simple. But there's a huge gap here, and this is why these audits are not world class, because the piece that's missing is there's a third requirement as far as I'm concerned. Are you happy with the standard operating procedure that you've got? In other words, does it do something? Does it physically control the input properly? And what I basically mean by that is it clear? Is it clear and unambiguous? Okay, that's what it should be. It should be clear and unambiguous. So I'll give you a little example. Let's say we're trying to control the temperature on the input side of a process. We need a standard operating procedure. It should be clear and unambiguous. There you go. 40 degrees centigrade. That's it. No tolerance. I don't need a tolerance, by the way, because I don't have a shaky hand. I can dial it to 40 degrees. The actual setting on the dial should be 40 degrees. Don't get me wrong, the temperature control system inside the machine might cycle up and down. So I might not get exactly 40, I might get 42 now and again, I might get 38 now and again, depending on what's going through the process. But the setting on the input, the dial setting, is clear and unambiguous with no tolerance. So I've got a standard operating procedure. Yes. Are you happy with it? Is it clear and unambiguous? Yes. Do you use it? In other words, you go up to the machine. What's the operator got it set on? They got it set on 40 degrees. Brilliant. Tick all three. You pass the audit. If one of these is wrong, you fail the audit. Now that's a world-class audit, and it's dead simple. It's not complicated. People think world class has to be somehow super complicated or technical. Not at all. We're using the laws of physics. You fix this side of the input on a process, you will fix this side on the output of a process. It's just the laws of physics. It can't be any different. Do the same always, you get the same always. That's what control is about. Now, why am I unhappy with these? Well, the reason why I'm not happy with the auditing procedure is because that middle one is missing. And not only is it missing, they actually allow the companies to almost do whatever they like with their standard operating procedure. Now, I understand why they're doing this, because if you go into a company, if you've just turned up and you're a visitor and you go to, let's say you go to a plating company. I visited a plating company that was NADCAP certified. Now, I'm not a plating expert. I was there to help solve a problem that was coming to one of my clients, and I turned up and we went to audit the process. And the NADCAP procedure allowed the following standards to exist on the plating plant, okay? Because it didn't say, are you happy with the standard? Because the auditor would say, well, I'm not a plating expert. I can't know if the standard is any good or not. Okay. Here's what the standard said on some of the plating plant. It said, put the parts in the electro clean. So it said clean. This was on the paperwork. For between 0 to 5 minutes. That's what the paperwork actually said. Between 0 and 5 minutes. So in other words, 0. You can choose not to clean it at all if you want. Now, this was a manual plating plant, by the way. It wasn't an automated plant where there's a deliberate cycle and you can't really change the cycle because you're plating lots of similar things. They're all getting plated, etc. It was manual. So the person wired all the components up. It was a subcontract plating plant. They would then wire them to the individual bath. Then after a few minutes, they'd move them to the next bath. So this is under the control of the operator. Now, clearly you can't specify exactly what the time should be because the operator's wandering up and down the bath. So you have to give them a little bit of leeway. You have to give them a bit of a window. But what do you think? 0 to 5 minutes. I've got a standard operating procedure. Are you happy with it? Now, you don't have to be a plating expert to know that's crap. That is crap. Further down the process, it said when you put the components in the plating bath, you can set the voltage. So the next one was volts. You could put it between 2 to 4 volts. Oh, you can choose. Now, electroplating, it's based on physics. You can work out the voltage that you need depending upon the surface area that you're trying to plate. It's a calculation and there is a correct voltage to be used. The operator should not have choice here. They should be told to dial it to a value. Once they've dialed it to a value, take their hands off. It's not going to move. The volts are going to be there. So this is ridiculous. But by the way, this company had NADCAP certification and they passed it. But they were happily producing defects and sending them to my bloody client. So we went in, looked at this. So I went, audit, standard operating procedure. Am I happy with it? Definitely not. Was I using it? Now, when I spoke to the operator, lovely guy to talk to, very helpful. We talked about the way the process worked, etc., etc. And yeah, he was following all the rules. He was great. So we have a tick here, we have a tick here, and we have an absolute red flag there because he could do whatever he bloody well wanted, given the rules. So one of the things I said is, I want to bring these in. I want to make the standard clear and unambiguous, please. Can we wind them in? I deliberately want the voltage to be fixed. I don't want any leeway. It's physics. There shouldn't be any leeway on the voltage. This should have a window because the guy's wandering up and down, so we've got to give him a bit of leeway there. But can we bring the windows in? And you know the answer I got when I wanted to do this? They said, no, can we leave the windows reasonably wide? And I said, why? They said, so we passed the NADCAP audit. Because the standard operating procedure says a nice wide window. Do we always hit the nice wide window? Yes. So we say what we do, and we always do what we say, and we pass the audit. We produce shitloads of defects. You tell me, is that world-class auditing? Now, world-class auditing is, do you have a standard operating procedure? Are you happy with it? Is it clear and unambiguous? And do you use it? And that's the bit that I teach my clients to do. I teach all my clients to apply those 3 rules. One of my clients in Slovakia, this is their problem-solving technique. So when they have a sudden escape, they have a sudden defect that they're not expecting, they sit down and they look at what the variable was that caused the problem, and they ask themselves, do we have a standard operating procedure? Are we happy with the standard operating procedure? And were we using it? And usually one of these has gone. Maybe there's something they didn't consider. They didn't have a standard operating procedure. They're going to write one. Maybe they've got one, but it's confusing and a new operator didn't understand. It needs rewriting maybe. Or we had a new operator and they're not trained in using it and they forgot to use it. But usually when something goes wrong, it's one of those 3. Do you have a standard operating procedure? Are you happy with it? And do you use it? Now that to me is world-class auditing. And finally, the last thing to say about world-class auditing is this. And again, these auditors will do this. They'll walk into a production line situation and they will spend 2 or 3 hours doing an audit. Now I gotta be frank, I'm gonna spend 20 minutes doing an audit. And if I can't find what I'm looking for in 20 minutes, I will walk away and score that area down. Here's the reason why. I walk onto the area. I want to have standard operating procedures that are easy to find. They are at the point of activity. Probably the operator's got them right next to them, or they're visual, they're stuck up on the machine right next to them. So we've got a standard operating procedure. I can then easily audit them and I can easily check that they're being used. If we have to search for these, so for instance, we go and say, do you have standard operating procedures? And the guy says, oh yeah, I think we got the documentation in the office. I'll go and have a look in the filing cabinet. And he wanders off. And then he comes back and says, oh, I can't find what I'm looking for. I think the supervisor's got him somewhere. And then we go find the supervisor. And he wanders off to try and find the standard operating procedures. I am not going to spend hours looking for the rules. Because if I can't find them, guess what we're not doing? We can't be using them. It's just a big red flag. And I would never spend hours doing audits. Now I said this to one of my clients. I said, you should take about 10 minutes to do an audit. And he sent me an email. He said, Paul, we've audited a production line this morning. I said, how did it go, Dave? He said, it took us 2 hours. I said, okay. I said, what are you aiming for? He said, well, you told me 10 minutes. We're aiming for 10 minutes. And over a period of about a year, he would get in touch and he'd say, by the way, the audit now takes 45 minutes. Oh, by the way, the audit now takes 30 minutes. And gradually, they visualized all the standards. They used 5S to improve the process. And we eventually got the audit. They got the audit time to 20 minutes. And I said, what do you think, Dave? He said, I think 20 minutes is about it. He said, we've got a production line, we've got several workstations, and I think 20 minutes is a reasonable time to just go to each one, standard operating procedure, are we happy with it, are we using it? I went, okay, that's a great audit. Spending 3 hours. The minute you spend 3 hours doing an audit, you ain't in control, can't be. Can't know what's going on if it takes that long to find out the rules and to check that they're being followed. So world-class audits are quick because the standards are visual. World-class audits check those three. Do you have a standard operating procedure? Are you happy with it? And do you use it? I'm afraid certified audits typically only do those two usually. And so consequently, that isn't what I would teach anybody. I want to teach you to be world-class. I want to teach you to apply this stuff directly to a machine and make these disappear. These tools are brilliant if you use them as a proper control plan. They are brilliant if you add that in there. You should be doing this. They have the capability of making you world-class, but you have to use them for process control. You don't have to use them as a badge or a prize to be won. That's not what they're for. They're there to help you make bucket loads of cash. So, world-class process audits. Standard operating procedure. Are you happy with it? And do you use it? Use those 3 rules and you'll definitely make more money.